Yeah, actually, I was born in a remote area of Quebec in the Eastern Townships, and my father had a farm, a pretty successful farm. Actually, my grandfather was one of the founder of a company that became, AgroPure,
Wow.
which is a large, agro company in Canada. But nobody in my family had more than a high school
High
grade,
school.
So having access to knowledge and education was not really something valued. They were successful businessmen, and for them, this is something that was not really necessary to achieve your dream in life. So, that was their point of view. But I was a very curious guy, and I felt very isolated, in that area. And for me, very early in my life, I realized that having access to knowledge was kind of a critical way
Right.
to bring something to a community and to your friends. And if you want to be accepted in a group and in a team, you need to be able to bring something to that group. So just to give you an idea of how I felt, in 1967, my father, decided to bring us, to the international exhibition in Montreal.
Right.
And for me, I recall that moment as a very important moment in my life, because when we crossed the bridge, the Champlain Bridge, that day, I finally realized that there were people speaking French outside of my village.
Oh, wow.
And for me, it was kind of, wow, this world is really cool. I'm not alone. And I want to know that world. So the first part of my life was really focused on, okay, now that I know that there is a lot of knowledge, everywhere, how can I acquire that? And it became kind of the first real challenge of my life. I had to convince my father at one point that, if I cannot continue my education, I think, I will find my own way. And after, a while, then
Right.
they realized, my parents realized that this was maybe an opportunity, and I became the first one in the family to go to university.
Wow.
So in this exercise, I focused on finance, I focused on marketing. I got a bachelor, I got a master's in science. So I wanted to have the quantitative side and as well as the emotional, more creative side of marketing, because I really felt that you could do everything with the numbers if you can put a story around that.
Right. And so it's interesting that usually, in today, it's the other way around, meaning kids don't want to go to school or college, and, they rather play video games or do other interesting stuff. And parents are like, no, you have to go to college. So what led, I'm curious, what was the rationale behind, your father's hesitant to send you to school and education?
Well, I think this was the old way, of rural Quebec. If you go back 50, 60 years ago, it was not seen as something that would bring anything good to your life. I think it was only a lack of understanding
Right.
what knowledge could bring to someone. And there was also there were also other reasons, because my parents were expecting me to be taking the farm to the next
Right.
the next step, the next
Right.
generation. And I think they were looking at becoming educated as a threat more than as something that would add value to the family.
Okay.
That was the mindset of that time, and but that it changed a lot, because once I was able to convince my father that going to a university was something interesting, he started to be very curious where it would lead me.
Okay.
And actually, when I graduated and I found my first job at PricewaterhouseCoopers in Montreal, they were all impressed, because they couldn't believe that I could find a job for such a company.
Wow.
So then it changed everything. I became kind of a hero, for him. But that was also a confirmation that my choice of fighting for knowledge, acquiring maximum knowledge, during the first years of my life was really the right thing to do.
And so I'm curious, you grew up in a family where knowledge wasn't, the priority, and somehow you got the bug. So do you think that's part genetics or socialization? Like, what happened? Because you weren't really, the socialization wasn't around knowledge acquisition, but you were just fascinated by it.
I was fascinated by what you can do with knowledge.
Right.
And, the more you learn, the more you realize that you don't know anything.
Yeah.
It's kind of a machine,
Absolutely.
it's a circle, the more you learn, the more you want to learn. And I think this is basically what saved the most of us, and what saved me to some extent, because once you understand that, you can contribute to a society, to a community. And if you can contribute to a community, that community will give you back immense, return. And for me, it's important in life to feel that.